Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cold observation window of Research Station Alpha, watching the massive alien transport ship dock with their facility. The vessel was unlike anything she had ever seen, a hulking mass of black metal covered in spikes and angular protrusions that made it look more like a medieval weapon than a spacecraft. Steam hissed from various ports as the ship settled into position, and Sarah could feel the vibration through the station's hull. "First contact protocol is in effect," announced Commander Rodriguez over the intercom. "All personnel are to remain calm and follow established procedures." Sarah's heart raced as she thought about the implications of this moment. After decades of searching the cosmos for intelligent life, humanity had finally made contact. But these weren't the peaceful, advanced beings she had imagined from science fiction stories. The intercepted communications suggested these aliens called themselves the Kronak Empire, and their reputation preceded them across the galaxy as fierce warriors. The docking bay doors opened with a mechanical groan, and Sarah watched as the first aliens stepped onto human soil. They were enormous, easily 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and thick, muscled limbs. Their skin was a mottled green-gray color, tough and leathery like ancient armor. But what struck Sarah most were their faces. The aliens had small, deep-set eyes that seemed to squint constantly, as if they were perpetually struggling to see clearly. Captain Throck of the Kronak Empire stomped down the boarding ramp, his heavy boots echoing through the docking bay. Behind him came a delegation of his finest warriors, each one carrying weapons that looked crude but undeniably deadly. The humans waiting to greet them seemed tiny in comparison, like children meeting adults for the first time. "Welcome to Research Station Alpha," said Commander Rodriguez, stepping forward with his diplomatic team. "I am Commander Rodriguez, representing Earth's colonial authority." Throck grunted and looked around the docking bay with obvious confusion. His small eyes darted from corner to corner, as if he was having trouble taking in all the details of his surroundings. "Where are the defenses?" he asked in heavily accented English, his voice like grinding stone. "Where are the weapon emplacements? The shield generators?" "We come in peace," Rodriguez replied carefully. "This is a research facility, not a military installation." The Kronak captain laughed, a harsh sound that made several humans flinch. "Peace? You expect us to believe that?" He gestured at his warriors, who spread out slightly, their hands moving to their weapons. "We have studied your species for months. We know what you are capable of." Sarah frowned from her position at the observation window. Something was wrong with this conversation. The aliens seemed to be misinterpreting everything the humans said and did. It was as if they were seeing threats where none existed. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's lead xenobiologist, stepped forward. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. We've been looking forward to learning about your culture and sharing knowledge." Throck's eyes narrowed to tiny slits as he stared at Webb. "Clever," he growled. "Very clever. You think your deception will work on us? We can see through your lies." "What deception?" Webb asked, genuinely confused. "We're being completely honest with you." The tension in the docking bay was rising rapidly. Sarah could see the Kronak warriors becoming more agitated, their hands tightening on their weapons. The human security team was also becoming nervous, though they were trying hard not to show it. "Captain Throck," Commander Rodriguez said, "perhaps we should move to a more comfortable location for our discussions. We've prepared meeting rooms where we can talk in private." Throck's massive head swiveled toward Rodriguez, and Sarah noticed something strange. The alien's eyes seemed to focus on Rodriguez's throat, then move to his wrists, then to a spot just below his ribcage. It was as if he was studying specific parts of the human body rather than looking at Rodriguez as a whole person. "You lead us into your trap," Throck said, his voice getting louder. "You think we cannot see what you are doing? You think we are blind to your preparations?" Sarah's mind raced as she watched the exchange. The aliens were clearly seeing something that wasn't there, or perhaps not seeing something that was there. Their behavior reminded her of someone with severe vision problems, but that didn't make sense. How could a species with poor eyesight develop advanced space travel? Dr. Webb tried again to defuse the situation. Captain, I assure you we have no hostile intentions. Perhaps if you could explain what you're seeing that concerns you? Throck pointed a massive finger at Webb. You mock us with your words while your body prepares to strike. We can see the tension in your killing muscles. We can see how you position yourself for attack. Sarah's eyes widened as she suddenly understood what was happening. The aliens weren't seeing the humans as complete beings. They were focusing on specific parts, the parts that could be used for fighting or killing. It was as if their vision was designed to detect threats and weaknesses rather than to see the whole picture. She grabbed her tablet and quickly typed a message to Commander Rodriguez. The aliens seem to have specialized vision. They're seeing us as threats because they're focusing on our physical capabilities rather than our intentions. Suggest everyone sit down and keep hands visible. Rodriguez glanced at his tablet and nodded slightly. Captain Throck, would you and your warriors like to sit down? We can have refreshments brought in while we talk. Sit? Throck seemed genuinely puzzled by the suggestion. Why would warriors sit in the presence of enemies? We're not enemies, Rodriguez said patiently. Look, I'll sit first to show you it's safe. As Rodriguez sat down in one of the chairs that had been arranged for the meeting, something remarkable happened. Throck's expression changed slightly, and his posture became marginally less aggressive. You make yourself vulnerable, Throck said, sounding surprised. This is not the action of one who plans attack. Sarah watched with growing excitement as her theory was confirmed. The alien's vision was indeed specialized, designed to detect threats and assess combat potential. When the humans made themselves appear less threatening, the aliens' perception of them changed. But this raised even more questions. How had such a species developed advanced technology? How did they function in daily life if they could only see in terms of strengths and weaknesses? And, most importantly, what did this mean for human-alien relations going forward? Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief psychologist, had been watching the proceedings with growing understanding. She stepped forward slowly, keeping her hands at her sides and her movements deliberate and non-threatening. Captain Throck, she said in a calm, even tone, we would very much like to learn about your people and how you see the world. In return, we would be happy to share our knowledge with you. Throck studied her with his small, intense eyes. Sarah could see him focusing on different parts of Vasquez's body, her hands, her stance, the set of her shoulders. You speak of sharing, he said finally. But what could we learn from a species so poorly designed for survival? What do you mean? Vasquez asked. Look at yourselves, Throck gestured dismissively. Your eyes are huge and poorly protected. Your limbs are thin and weak. Your skin provides no armor. How have you survived so long? Sarah realized this was a crucial moment. The aliens saw humans as physically inferior, which might actually work in their favor. If the Kronak viewed them as non-threatening due to their apparent weakness, it might prevent conflict. Commander Rodriguez stood up slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and obvious. Perhaps our survival comes from different strengths than physical ones. We use our minds to overcome challenges that might require physical force. Throck's laugh was less harsh this time, more puzzled than mocking. You mean you think your way out of danger instead of fighting your way out? Often, yes, Rodriguez replied. Sometimes the best solution to a problem doesn't involve fighting at all. This seemed to genuinely confuse the Kronak captain. He turned to one of his warriors and spoke rapidly in their own language. The warrior responded with what sounded like equally confused tones. Sarah made another note on her tablet. The aliens seemed to have difficulty understanding non-violent solutions to problems. This suggested their entire worldview was built around conflict and competition. But, if that was true, how did their society function? How did they cooperate enough to build spaceships and explore the galaxy? Dr. Webb had been quietly observing the aliens' behavior, and he now spoke up. Captain, may I ask about your people's history? How did the Kronak develop space travel? Throck's small eyes focused on Webb with what might have been surprise. You ask about our strength instead of hiding your weaknesses? This is unexpected. "We're curious about your achievements," Webb said honestly. "Building spacecraft requires tremendous cooperation and planning. We're impressed by what you've accomplished." For the first time since arriving, Throck seemed to relax slightly. His massive shoulders lowered, and his grip on his weapon loosened. "The Kronak have always been strong," he said with obvious pride. "When the food ran out on our homeworld, we fought for what remained. When the weak planets tried to resist us, we showed them our strength. When the void between stars tried to stop us, we built ships to defeat it." Sarah was taking rapid notes as Throck spoke. The aliens' description of their history was revealing. They had approached every challenge as a conflict to be won rather than a problem to be solved. Their space program had apparently developed not from scientific curiosity but from the need to find new resources and territories to conquer. "But, surely, Dr. Vasquez interjected carefully, not every challenge can be solved through conflict? Building a spaceship requires precise calculations, careful manufacturing, complex coordination between many individuals." Throck looked at her with what might have been confusion. "Of course. The weak perform these tasks for the strong. The strong protect the weak from enemies. This is how it has always been." The humans exchanged glances. The Kronak society was apparently based on a rigid hierarchy where physical strength determined social position. But this still didn't explain their unusual visual capabilities. Sarah decided to take a risk. She left her observation post and made her way down to the docking bay, moving slowly and keeping her hands visible. As she approached the group, she could feel Throck's intense gaze studying her movements. "Captain Throck," she said, "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, a vision specialist. I've been studying how different species perceive their environment. May I ask about Kronak eyesight?" Throck's expression became guarded. "You seek to find weaknesses in our senses?" "Not at all," Sarah replied quickly. "I'm trying to understand how your people see the world. It seems very different from how humans see." "All species see the same things," Throck said dismissively. "Enemies, allies, strong points, weak points. What else is there to see?" Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. This was exactly what she had suspected. "When you look at me right now, what do you see?" Throck studied her with his small, intense eyes. "I see small female with no obvious weapons. Hands capable of striking but too weak to cause damage. Stance suggests no combat training. Heart rate slightly elevated, nervous but not preparing for attack. Neck vulnerable to quick strike. Legs positioned for retreat, not advance." The other humans stared in amazement. Throck had just described Sarah in purely tactical terms, as if he was assessing her as a potential threat or ally in battle. He hadn't mentioned her clothing, her hair color, her facial expression, or any of the things a human would normally notice first. "That's remarkable," Sarah said, trying to keep her excitement in check. "You can see all of that just by looking at me?" "Of course," Throck replied, sounding puzzled. "How else would one look at another being? Do humans not assess these things when they meet?" Sarah realized they had stumbled onto something incredible. The Kronak didn't just have specialized vision, they had evolved a completely different way of perceiving other living beings. Where humans saw faces, expressions, and social cues, the Kronak saw tactical assessments, threat levels, and combat potential. "We see some of those things," Sarah said carefully, "but we also see other details. Your armor is beautifully crafted, for example. The metal has an interesting pattern that catches the light." Throck looked down at his own armor as if seeing it for the first time. "Pattern? Light? These things are not important. The armor protects the body. That is its purpose." Sarah exchanged a meaningful look with her colleagues. The aliens' vision wasn't just specialized, it was so focused on tactical information that they seemed unable to perceive aesthetic details or non-functional aspects of their environment. "Captain," Dr. Webb said, "when your people build spaceships, how do they decide what they should look like?" "Look like?" Throck seemed confused by the question. "Ships must be strong. They must protect the crew and carry weapons. Why would appearance matter?" Commander Rodriguez was beginning to understand the implications of what they were learning. Captain Throck, I think we have a lot to learn from each other. Your people see things that we miss, and perhaps we see things that you miss. Throck's small eyes studied Rodriguez with renewed interest. You admit weakness in your perception? Not weakness, Rodriguez replied. Difference. We see the world in different ways, which means we might be able to help each other understand things better. For the first time since the encounter began, Throck seemed genuinely intrigued rather than suspicious. You propose alliance? Sharing of strengths? Sarah could hardly contain her excitement. This first contact was turning out to be far more significant than anyone had anticipated. The Kronak's unique vision could revolutionize human understanding of perception and consciousness. And, perhaps human insights could help the aliens see their universe in new ways. But, she also realized they were just at the beginning of understanding these remarkable beings. There were still so many questions to answer about how their society functioned, how they had developed their technology, and what other abilities their specialized perception might give them. The meeting was just getting started, and Sarah knew that everything humanity thought they understood about intelligence and consciousness was about to change forever. 3 days after first contact, Research Station Alpha had been transformed into a bustling hub of interspecies cooperation. Sarah stood in Laboratory 7, watching as Captain Throck attempted to use a standard human computer terminal. His massive fingers struggled with the small keyboard, and his expression showed deep frustration. This device is poorly designed, Throck grumbled, his small eyes squinting at the screen. The symbols are too small and serve no tactical purpose. How do humans accomplish anything with such useless tools? Sarah had been observing these interactions carefully, documenting how the Kronak perceived human technology. What she was discovering changed everything she thought she knew about perception and intelligence. Captain, may I show you something? Sarah asked, pulling up a simple image on her tablet. It was a photograph of a sunset over mountains, something any human would find beautiful. She held it where Throck could see it clearly. Throck stared at the screen for several seconds, his brow furrowed in concentration. I see, light source at low angle. Terrain with elevated positions suitable for observation posts. Shadows that could hide small enemies. Atmospheric conditions that might affect projectile accuracy. He paused, looking confused. What is the tactical significance of this image? Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Throck literally could not see the beauty of the sunset. His brain was so focused on tactical assessment that aesthetic appreciation seemed impossible. She switched to another image, a crowd of people at a festival. Multiple individuals gathered in open space, Throck said immediately. Poor defensive positioning. Escape routes limited. High vulnerability to area attacks. Many individuals show relaxed postures indicating reduced alertness. He looked at Sarah with what might have been concern. Why do humans deliberately place themselves in such dangerous situations? They're celebrating, Sarah explained. It's a festival, a time for joy and community gathering. Throck's confusion was evident. Joy? Community? These are not survival behaviors. How does this gathering strengthen the tribe or defeat enemies? Dr. Webb had joined them and was listening with fascination. Captain, not everything humans do is about survival or conflict. We also value happiness, art, music, friendship. Art? Music? Throck repeated the words as if they were in a foreign language. These words have no meaning to Kronak. You speak of things that do not exist. Sarah realized they had discovered something profound. The Kronak's hyper-specialized vision had apparently prevented them from developing concepts that humans took for granted. They lived in a world where only tactical information mattered. Let me try an experiment, Sarah said. She pulled up a video of a Kronak warrior, one of Throck's own crew members, performing maintenance on their ship. What do you see here? Throck watched intently. Vector performs engine repair. His movements are efficient. His tool usage demonstrates proper training. His posture shows alertness for potential threats while working. Now watch this, Sarah said, showing him the same video with different focus. Look at how smoothly he moves. See the rhythm in his actions. Notice how his tools seem to dance in his hands. Throck stared at the screen, his small eyes moving back and forth as if he was trying to see something that wasn't there. I see only proper maintenance procedures. What is this dance you speak of? Sarah felt like she was witnessing something miraculous and tragic at the same time. The Kronak had evolved such specialized perception that they were blind to entire categories of experience that made life meaningful for humans. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Dr. Vasquez was conducting psychological evaluations of the Kronak crew members. She had discovered that their social structure was even more complex than initially understood. Explain to me, she said to Warrior Grok, one of Throck's subordinates, how decisions are made on your ship. Grok, who was slightly smaller than Throck but still massive by human standards, considered the question carefully. Captain Throck sees all threats and opportunities. His vision is strongest, so he commands. I see some threats he might miss due to angle or distance, so I assist. Weak eyes like Zechtel see only obvious dangers, so they follow orders. Weak eyes? Vasquez asked. Those whose vision is poor, Grok explained. They cannot assess combat potential accurately. They cannot see weak points in enemies or strong points in terrain. They must rely on others for survival. Vasquez was taking rapid notes. The Kronak society was apparently stratified based on visual acuity and the ability to make tactical assessments. What happens to those with very poor vision? They perform simple tasks, Grok said matter-of-factly. Food preparation, equipment maintenance, ship cleaning. Tasks that do not require threat assessment. But surely their poor vision might allow them to see other things that you miss? Grok looked at her with genuine confusion. What else is there to see? In the station's main laboratory, Dr. Webb was conducting vision tests with several Kronak volunteers. What he was discovering revolutionized human understanding of sensory evolution. Their eyes are incredibly specialized, he explained to Sarah over the intercom. They can detect micro-movements in muscle groups that indicate preparation for combat. They can see changes in posture that humans would never notice. They can assess structural weak points in materials and living beings with remarkable accuracy. But they can't see color variations that don't relate to camouflage or threat assessment, Sarah replied. They can't perceive aesthetic patterns. They can't even recognize facial expressions unless those expressions indicate combat readiness. Webb nodded grimly. It's as if their entire visual processing system evolved to be the ultimate predator-prey detection system. Everything else was filtered out as irrelevant noise. Sarah was studying brain scans that the Kronak had agreed to provide. The images showed neural structures unlike anything in human neuroscience. Look at this, she said, pointing to areas of unusual activity. Their visual cortex is enormous, but it's all focused on motion detection, threat assessment, and structural analysis. The areas that humans use for color processing, pattern recognition, and aesthetic appreciation are almost non-existent. This discovery raised profound questions about consciousness and intelligence. Were the Kronak truly intelligent in the way humans understood the concept, or were they more like biological machines optimized for warfare and survival? Captain Throck had been observing these scientific investigations with growing curiosity. He approached Sarah in the laboratory with an unusual request. Dr. Chen, he said, I wish to understand this beauty concept you spoke of. You claim humans see things that Kronak cannot see. Prove this. Sarah thought for a moment, then had an idea. Captain, look at this flower, she said, showing him a real rose from the station's hydroponics bay. Throck examined the flower carefully. Organic structure with defensive thorns. Bright coloration possibly indicating toxicity or used for camouflage. Fragile construction offers no protection. Poor design for survival. Now, Sarah said, I want you to try something different. Instead of looking for threats or weaknesses, just look at the shape. Look at how the petals curve. Notice how they spiral inward toward the center. Throck stared at the flower intently, his face contorting with effort. I see, curved structures arranged in pattern? He sounded uncertain, as if he was trying to describe something he could barely perceive. That's it, Sarah said excitedly. You're beginning to see the pattern. Now notice how the red color deepens toward the center. See how the petals catch the light differently depending on their angle. Throck's small eyes widened slightly. For a moment, Sarah thought she saw something like wonder cross his features. The patterns, they serve no function, yet they are pleasing to observe? Exactly, Sarah said. That's what we call beauty. Pattern and form that brings pleasure without serving a survival purpose. Throck continued staring at the flower, his expression showing a mixture of confusion and fascination. This is very strange, he murmured. I can almost see what you mean, but it is like looking through dense fog. The tactical assessment keeps overriding these other sensations. Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, an attempt by one species to experience perception in the way another species did. It was like watching someone learn to see color for the first time. But the process was clearly difficult for Throck. After a few minutes, he handed the flower back with obvious frustration. The effort is too great, he said. My mind returns to proper assessment automatically. Perhaps Cronach brains are not designed for such luxury thinking. Dr. Vasquez had been observing this interaction and stepped forward. Captain, may I ask about Cronach emotions? Do your people experience feelings like joy, sadness, or love? Throck considered this question seriously. We understand satisfaction when enemies are defeated. We understand concern when the tribe is threatened. We understand loyalty to strong leaders and protection of weak tribe members. Are these the emotions you speak of? Similar, Vasquez said, but humans also feel joy from music, sadness from beautiful stories, love between individuals who are not mated pairs. Music? Throck asked. You have mentioned this before. What is music? Sarah quickly connected her tablet to the laboratory sound system and played a simple piece of classical music, a gentle piano melody. Throck listened intently, his head tilted in concentration. I hear organized sound vibrations, he said after the piece ended. The pattern is regular but serves no apparent communication purpose. No threat warnings, no coordination signals. What is the function of these sounds? They have no function, Sarah explained. They exist purely to create emotional responses, to make us feel peaceful, or excited, or sad, or joyful. Throck looked at her as if she had just claimed that humans could fly. Sounds that serve no function yet affect behavior? This seems inefficient. Why would a species develop such responses? Dr. Webb had been thinking about this question extensively. Captain, perhaps the answer lies in how our species evolved differently. Humans developed as social creatures who needed to cooperate in groups. Art, music, and beauty help us bond with each other and work together. Your people developed as warriors who needed to identify threats and opportunities quickly. Both approaches led to successful species, but with very different ways of seeing the world. Throck nodded slowly. This explanation has logic. Different environments create different necessities. He paused, then asked, but if humans see these non-functional things, how do you survive? How do you detect dangers? Sarah realized this was the key question. We do detect dangers, but we use different methods. We rely more on logical analysis, communication between group members, and tool creation. We don't need to see every threat instantly because we can share information and work together to solve problems. Sharing information about threats? Throck asked. How is this possible? Either one sees a threat or one does not. Let me show you, Sarah said. She called over to Dr. Webb, who was across the room. Marcus, is there anything dangerous in your area that I should know about? Webb looked around carefully. The spectrometer has a small coolant leak. Nothing serious, but worth monitoring. Throck's eyes widened. You can assess distant threats through verbal communication? The other human evaluated danger and transmitted the assessment using spoken words? Exactly, Sarah said. Humans often share their perceptions so that the group benefits from everyone's observations. Throck turned to his warrior Grok and spoke rapidly in Kronak language. Grok responded with what sounded like surprise. We have never considered this possibility, Throck said. Kronak assess threats individually. To rely on another's vision would be weakness. Not weakness, Sarah said. Efficiency. Why should every person have to see every threat when information can be shared? Throck spent several minutes processing this concept. Sarah could see his worldview being challenged in fundamental ways. The idea that cooperation could replace individual hypervigilance was clearly difficult for him to accept. If this human method works, Throck said finally, then, perhaps Kronak methods are not the only path to survival. Perhaps different species require different strengths. Sarah felt a thrill of excitement. Throck was beginning to understand that diversity of approach could be beneficial rather than threatening. This was a crucial step toward real cooperation between the species. But she also knew they had only scratched the surface of these remarkable differences. The Kronak's unique perception raised questions that could take years or decades to fully explore. How did their society handle art, if they had any? How did they form personal relationships? How did they make decisions about non-tactical matters? Most importantly, what could humans learn from the Kronak's incredible ability to assess threats and structural weaknesses? And what could the Kronak learn from humanity's broader perceptual range and cooperative instincts? As the day ended, Sarah realized that first contact had become something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. They weren't just meeting another intelligent species, they were discovering entirely new ways that consciousness could evolve and function. The real adventure was just beginning. 2 weeks into the cultural exchange, Sarah discovered something that changed everything they thought they knew about the Kronak Empire. She was reviewing brain scan data in her laboratory when an anomaly caught her attention: neural activity patterns in some Kronak individuals that didn't match the tactical focused profiles they had documented. Dr. Webb, you need to see this, Sarah called across the lab. She pulled up the brain scans on her main display. Look at these readings from Zechtel, the engineer Throck mentioned. Webb studied the images intently. The visual processing areas are completely different from the warriors we've tested. Look at these regions here, they're showing activity in areas that correspond to pattern recognition and spatial reasoning in humans. Sarah nodded excitedly. Exactly. I think we've been wrong about Kronak vision. It's not that their entire species has the same tactical perception. Different individuals have different types of specialized sight. This discovery led to a breakthrough moment when Sarah requested to meet with Zechtel privately. The young Kronak was noticeably smaller than the warriors, with larger eyes that moved more frequently and seemed to focus on different details. Zechtel, Sarah began carefully, when you look at our space station, what do you see? Zechtel glanced around the laboratory nervously before responding. I see structures that fit together in precise ways. I see how the air circulation system follows logical pathways. I see that the materials are chosen for specific properties, this metal for strength, this plastic for flexibility, this glass for transparency. He paused, looking worried. Is this wrong? Should I be seeing threats instead? Sarah's heart raced with excitement. No, Zechtel. What you're seeing is perfect. You're seeing things the warriors can't see, aren't you? Zechtel looked around to make sure no other Kronak were listening, then nodded. I see how things are built. I see why they work. I see what would happen if you changed one piece. His voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes I see beautiful patterns in the way parts fit together, but I know I should not speak of such things. Why not? Sarah asked gently. Because it is not warrior sight, Zechtel replied. Those who cannot see enemies and weak points are less valuable to the tribe. We stay quiet and perform our duties. Sarah realized they had stumbled onto a caste system based entirely on visual specialization. Zechtel, how many Kronak have vision like yours? Perhaps 1 in 5, Zechtel said. But, we are taught from childhood to focus on tactical assessment instead. Most learn to mimic warrior vision, though poorly. This revelation prompted Sarah to request meetings with other non-warrior Kronak crew members. What she discovered revolutionized their understanding of the alien society. Mektal, the ship's cook, could see nutritional content and chemical composition in ways that amazed human scientists. When shown a piece of fruit, he immediately identified sugar content, vitamin levels, mineral composition, and potential allergens. I see what bodies need to stay strong, Mektal explained. I see which foods will provide energy for fighting, which will heal wounds, which will calm aggressive emotions. Drekta, responsible for ship maintenance, could see mechanical stress patterns and failure points with incredible precision. She could look at a piece of equipment and immediately identify parts that were wearing out or likely to break. I see how machines want to move, she said, trying to explain her ability. I see where forces push and pull. I see where materials grow tired from use. Most remarkable was Yevtel, the ship's navigator, whose vision seemed specialized for spatial relationships and astronomical phenomena. I see paths through space, Yevtel told Sarah. I see how gravity flows from large masses. I see how radiation moves between stars. I see safe routes and dangerous areas. Sarah realized that the Kronak had evolved not one type of specialized vision, but multiple types, each adapted for different aspects of survival and civilization building. The warriors saw threats and weaknesses, but the other castes saw the things necessary to build and maintain their society. Dr. Chen, Zechtel said during one of their private conversations, may I ask about human vision? You say humans see beauty and patterns that serve no function. How is this possible? Sarah thought carefully about how to explain this. Zechtel, I think humans evolved what you might call generalist vision. We see a little bit of everything, some tactical information, some structural patterns, some aesthetic beauty, some emotional cues from faces. We're not as specialized as your people, but we can adapt to different situations. You mean all humans see the same things? Zechtel asked with surprise. Mostly, yes. Though individuals might be better at noticing certain details than others. Zechtel was quiet for a long moment. This explains much about human behavior. You all share similar perception, so you can understand each other easily. Kronak with different vision types often have difficulty communicating. This comment led Sarah to a startling realization. Zechtel, when warriors like Captain Throck give you orders, do they understand what you actually see? No, Zechtel replied sadly. They tell us to look for threats and weaknesses, but we explain that we see structural integrity or nutritional content instead. They think we are being defiant or stupid. They do not understand that our eyes simply work differently. Sarah felt a chill as she realized the implications. The Kronak society was built on a fundamental misunderstanding between different types of people. The warriors, who held all the power, literally could not comprehend what their technical specialists were seeing. She brought this discovery to Captain Throck, who listened with growing confusion and what might have been distress. You claim that Zechtel and the others see different things than warriors see? Throck asked. This is impossible. All Kronak see threats and opportunities. Some are simply better at it than others. Captain, let me show you something, Sarah said. She called Zechtel over and placed a complex mechanical device on the table between them. Both of you look at this and tell me what you see. Throck studied the device intently. Metal construction with moving parts. Potential weapon if modified. Weak points at joints. Could be used as projectile if thrown. Weight distribution suggests it would be effective club. Zechtel looked at the same device. Precision gear assembly with 3.7 to 1 reduction ratio. Primary stress loads on bearing surfaces show optimal load distribution. Manufacturing tolerances suggest high-quality production. Lubrication system appears designed for long-term operation without maintenance. Throck stared at Zechtel in amazement. How do you see these numbers and technical details? These things are not visible. They are visible to me, Zechtel replied quietly. Just as threat assessment is visible to you but not to me. Sarah watched as understanding slowly dawned on Captain Throck's face. You mean? Zechtel sees true things that I cannot see? And I see true things that he cannot see? Exactly, Sarah said. Your people have evolved different types of vision for different purposes. Warriors see threats, engineers see structures, cooks see nutrition, navigators see spatial relationships. Each type of sight is necessary for your civilization to function. Throck spent several minutes processing this information. Sarah could see him struggling with concepts that challenged his fundamental understanding of reality. If this is true, Throck said finally, then we have been wrong about the weak eyes. They do not see poorly. They see differently. Yes, Sarah confirmed. And their different sight gives them abilities that warriors don't have. Throck turned to Zechtel with an expression that might have been apologetic. Engineer Zechtel, I have not understood your value to the ship. I thought you followed instructions poorly because you could not see what I saw. But you were seeing things I cannot see. Zechtel looked shocked by this acknowledgement from his captain. You do not think I am defective? No, Throck said firmly. You are specialized differently. This is valuable. Sarah realized she was witnessing a historic moment, the beginning of a fundamental shift in Kronak society's understanding of itself. Dr. Webb had been documenting similar discoveries with other Kronak crew members. He found that the navigators could perceive gravitational fields and electromagnetic radiation in ways that could revolutionize human space travel. The engineers could see structural relationships that could improve human architecture and manufacturing. Sarah, Webb said excitedly, the medical officer, Grechtel, can see circulatory systems and nervous system activity just by looking at living beings. She diagnosed a vitamin deficiency in me that our medical scanners missed. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the implications of these discoveries. The Kronak weren't just another intelligent species, they were a collection of different types of specialized perception working together to create a functioning civilization. But this also meant their society had been operating with a fundamental handicap. By dismissing non-warrior vision as inferior, they had been underutilizing the very abilities that made their technology possible. Captain Throck, Sarah said, I think our two species could help each other in ways we never imagined. Humans have generalist vision that lets us see connections between different types of information. Your people have specialist vision that sees details we could never notice. Throck nodded thoughtfully. You propose true cooperation? Not just sharing of territories or resources, but sharing of sight itself? Exactly. Imagine human scientists working with Kronak engineers who can see structural perfection. Imagine Kronak navigators working with human astronomers who can see aesthetic patterns in star formations. Imagine Kronak medical officers working with human doctors who can see emotional and psychological factors. For the first time since they had met, Throck smiled, a terrifying expression on his massive face, but clearly intended as friendly. This would make both species stronger than either could be alone. Sarah realized that first contact had evolved far beyond a simple meeting between civilizations. They had discovered that intelligence and perception could develop in ways that were completely complementary. The Kronak's hyper-specialized vision and humanity's generalist perception weren't competing approaches to consciousness, they were puzzle pieces that fit together to create something greater than either could achieve alone. But, as exciting as these discoveries were, Sarah knew they were still just beginning to understand the full implications. How many other aspects of Kronak society had been misunderstood? How many human capabilities might prove valuable to the Kronak? And what new forms of cooperation might be possible when beings with such different perceptions worked together? The answers to these questions would reshape both civilizations in ways neither species could imagine. 1 month after first contact, Research Station Alpha had become the site of an unprecedented experiment in interspecies cooperation. Sarah stood in the newly constructed joint laboratory, watching as human scientists worked alongside Kronak specialists in ways that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Dr. Martinez, the station's materials engineer, was collaborating with Drekta, the Kronak maintenance specialist. They were examining a failed component from a human spacecraft engine. "I can see that the failure occurred along this stress line," Martinez said, pointing to barely visible crack patterns. "But I can't determine why the stress concentrated in this particular location." Drekta studied the component with her specialized vision. "The metal grains flow in currents like water," she explained. "Here, the current hits obstacle, small inclusion of different material. Current splits around obstacle, creating weakness eddy. Stress follows weakness path." Martinez stared at the component with new understanding. "You can actually see the grain structure and material flow patterns? That's incredible. With that information, we could redesign the alloy to eliminate these weak points." This type of breakthrough was occurring throughout the station. Human generalist vision combined with Kronak specialist vision was producing insights neither species could achieve alone. But the collaboration wasn't without challenges. Sarah had been documenting the difficulties of cross-species communication and was beginning to understand that the problems went deeper than simple language barriers. In the astrometrics lab, Dr. Patel was working with Yevtal, the Kronak navigator, to map safe routes through a dangerous asteroid field. "The gravitational interactions create a complex dynamic system," Patel explained, showing holographic projections of planetary movements. "We need to calculate the safest path through the field over time." Yevtal studied the hologram intently. "I see the gravity rivers flowing between large masses," she said. "But your projection shows only positions, not the living movement of space itself. How can you navigate when you cannot see where space wants to go?" Patel frowned in confusion. "Space wants to go somewhere? I don't understand what you mean." This communication difficulty was repeated throughout the station. The Kronak specialists saw dynamic, living systems where humans saw static mechanical processes. They perceived intentions and desires in inanimate objects, while humans saw only physical laws and mathematical relationships. Sarah realized this represented a fundamental difference in how the species understood reality itself. She brought this observation to Captain Throck during one of their regular meetings. "Captain, I think our people understand the universe in very different ways," she explained. "Humans see the universe as a machine that operates according to rules. Your people seem to see it as something alive that has its own desires and intentions." Throck considered this carefully. "Of course the universe is alive. How else could it function? Dead things do not move or change. Only living things show will and purpose." "But the planets orbit the sun because of gravitational forces," Sarah protested. "It's a mechanical process, not a living decision." "Gravity is the universe's desire to bring things together," Throck replied firmly. "The planets choose to follow their paths because the paths feel right to them. To say they have no choice is to say they are not real." Sarah felt a chill of recognition. The Kronak didn't just see differently, they thought differently. Their entire philosophy was based on the assumption that everything in the universe was alive and making choices, while human philosophy was based on mechanical causation. This difference was creating problems in their collaborative work. In the medical bay, Dr. Foster was struggling to work with Grechtel, the Kronak medical specialist. "The patient has an infection that needs to be treated with antibiotics," Foster explained. "The bacteria are multiplying and will cause serious illness if we don't stop them." Grechtel examined the patient with her specialized medical vision. "I see the small life forms fighting with the large life form," she said. "But they are not evil invaders. They are confused and hungry. The patient's body is not giving them proper guidance about where they belong. They're bacteria," Foster said with frustration. "They don't have consciousness or intentions. They're just reproducing according to biological programming." "All life has consciousness," Grechtel replied with equal frustration. "Even the smallest beings make choices about where to go and what to consume. To treat them as mindless machines is to misunderstand the nature of existence." This philosophical divide was hampering cooperation throughout the station. Sarah realized they needed to find a way for both species to work together despite their fundamentally different worldviews. The solution came from an unexpected source. Commander Rodriguez had been observing the collaboration difficulties and proposed a radical experiment. "What if we stop trying to convince each other that our worldview is correct," he suggested during a joint meeting, "and instead focus on combining our different approaches to get better results?" "I don't understand," said Dr. Vasquez. "Look at it this way," Rodriguez explained. "The Cronach see the universe as alive and making choices. Humans see it as mechanical and following rules. What if both perspectives are useful? What if we can solve problems better by using both approaches simultaneously?" Sarah was intrigued by this idea. "You mean like having human scientists provide mathematical analysis while Cronach specialists provide intuitive understanding of dynamic systems?" "Exactly. Instead of arguing about which view is correct, we use both to get more complete understanding." Captain Throck was nodding thoughtfully. "This has wisdom. Warrior sight and engineer sight are both needed, even though they see different things. Perhaps human sight and Cronach sight are also both needed." They decided to test this approach with a complex engineering problem, designing a new type of spacecraft that could safely navigate through regions of space where both gravitational anomalies and hostile alien forces pose threats. Human engineers provided detailed mathematical calculations of stress loads, fuel requirements, and structural specifications. Cronach engineers provided insights into how materials would behave over time and how mechanical systems would develop their own operational patterns. Human tactical experts analyzed potential enemy capabilities and defensive strategies. Cronach warriors identified weak points and attack opportunities that human analysis had missed. Human navigators calculated orbital mechanics and trajectory optimization. Cronach navigators identified safe paths through gravitational fields and predicted how space itself would change over time. The result was a spacecraft design that neither species could have produced alone. It was mathematically optimized according to human engineering principles, but also took into account the dynamic, living nature of space that only Cronach perception could detect. "This is remarkable," said Dr. Webb, reviewing the final design specifications. "The ship will be 30% more efficient than anything we've built before, and the Cronach insights have identified potential failure modes that our analysis completely missed." Captain Throck was equally impressed. "Human calculations reveal precise relationships between forces that we felt but could not measure. Combined with our understanding of living systems, this creates something stronger than either approach alone." The success of this project led to expansion of the collaborative methodology throughout the station. In the biological sciences, human researchers mapped genetic sequences and biochemical pathways while Cronach specialists provided insights into how organisms wanted to grow and change. Dr. Chen, a human geneticist, was working with Mechtal to understand nutrition at the molecular level. "The protein structure indicates it should provide essential amino acids," Chen explained, showing molecular diagrams. Mechtal studied the same data through his nutritional vision. "Yes, but the protein also feels lonely. It wants to be combined with specific minerals to achieve satisfaction. Alone, it will cause restlessness in the eater." This combination of chemical analysis and nutritional intuition led to the development of food supplements that were far more effective than either species had produced independently. In the psychology department, Dr. Vasquez was collaborating with several Cronach specialists to understand consciousness itself. "Human consciousness seems to be a generalist system," Vasquez observed. "We integrate many different types of information to create unified awareness. But Cronach consciousness appears to be more specialized. Different individuals access different aspects of reality. This explains why cooperation works," added Grechtel, the medical officer. "Human minds can see connections between different specialist insights. Cronach minds can see deep into specific aspects of existence. Together, we see more completely." Sarah was documenting these discoveries and beginning to understand that they had witnessed something unprecedented in the known galaxy, two species whose evolutionary paths had created perfectly complementary forms of consciousness. But, as the collaboration deepened, she also began to notice changes in both species. Humans working closely with Kronak specialists were developing enhanced perception in specific areas. Dr. Martinez was beginning to see stress patterns in materials without instruments. Dr. Patel was developing intuitive understanding of gravitational systems that went beyond mathematical calculation. Similarly, Kronak specialists working with humans were broadening their perceptual range. Zechtel was learning to see aesthetic patterns in engineering designs. Yevtel was beginning to appreciate the mathematical beauty of orbital mechanics. We're changing each other, Sarah realized during a meeting with Captain Throck. Extended exposure to different types of consciousness is expanding our perceptual abilities. Throck nodded gravely. This is profound development. Kronak who learn human sight become more than they were before. Humans who learn Kronak sight also become enhanced. The implications were staggering. If the collaboration continued, both species might evolve new forms of consciousness that combined the best aspects of each approach. They might be witnessing the birth of a new type of intelligence that was neither purely human nor purely Kronak, but something entirely unprecedented. But this also raised important questions. What would happen to traditional human and Kronak societies as individuals returned home with expanded consciousness? Would these changes be welcomed or seen as threats to cultural identity? Sarah was beginning to realize that first contact had become something far more significant than a simple meeting between civilizations. They were participating in a transformation of consciousness itself, an evolution of intelligence that could reshape the future of both species. The question was whether both civilizations would embrace this transformation or resist it out of fear of losing their traditional identities. The answer would determine not just the future of human-Kronak relations, but the future of consciousness in the galaxy. 6 months after first contact, the transformation was undeniable. Sarah stood before the Galactic Council, preparing to deliver the most important presentation in human history. Representatives from dozens of species filled the vast chamber, all eager to understand the revolutionary discoveries that had emerged from the human-Kronak collaboration. Honored delegates, Sarah began, what we have learned challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness, intelligence, and the nature of perception itself. She activated the holographic display, showing brain scans from both humans and Kronak who had participated in the extended collaboration program. 6 months ago, human and Kronak brain patterns were completely distinct, Sarah explained. Human consciousness showed broad, generalist neural activity. Kronak consciousness showed intense specialization in specific perceptual areas. The display shifted to show new scans. But, after working together closely, both species are developing hybrid consciousness patterns. Humans are gaining specialized perception abilities, while Kronak are developing broader perceptual integration. Ambassador Zethran of the Ulterian Federation leaned forward in his crystalline shell. Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that consciousness itself is contagious? That different species can literally share ways of thinking? Not exactly contagious, Sarah replied. More like educational. When beings with different types of consciousness work closely together, they can learn to perceive reality in new ways. The brain is more plastic than we previously understood. She showed video recordings of recent collaboration sessions. Dr. Martinez was now able to see structural stress patterns in materials without any instruments, his eyes moving in the same focused way as a Kronak engineer. Meanwhile, Zechtel had learned to perceive aesthetic patterns in his engineering designs, his work becoming both functional and beautiful in ways that amazed both species. The implications extend far beyond simple skill transfer, Sarah continued. We're seeing the emergence of entirely new forms of consciousness, hybrid awareness that combines the specialized perception of Kronak with the integrative capabilities of humans. Captain Throck stepped forward to address the council. Over the months, his appearance had changed subtly. His small eyes seemed larger and more expressive, and his movements showed a grace that hadn't been there during first contact. Kronak Empire has learned much from humans, he announced in his deep voice. We thought there was only one way to see reality, the warrior's way of threats and opportunities. But humans showed us that existence has many layers. Beauty, cooperation, non-functional pleasure, these are real things that make life richer. He paused, gathering his thoughts carefully. More important, we learned that different ways of seeing can work together. Chronac specialists each see part of truth. Human generalists help us combine these parts into complete understanding. Together, we see more than either species alone. The council chamber buzzed with excitement and concern. Delegate Korthak of the Vegan Trade Union spoke up. This collaboration sounds beneficial, but what are the risks? Are humans and Chronac losing their original cultural identities? Sarah had been expecting this question. There are certainly challenges, she admitted. Some individuals from both species have difficulty readjusting when they return to their home cultures. They see things differently now, and sometimes their own people view this with suspicion. Dr. Vasquez had joined the presentation team and now stepped forward. We've documented cases of what we call perceptual displacement syndrome, she explained. Individuals who develop hybrid consciousness sometimes feel like strangers in their own societies. They see things their people cannot see and have trouble communicating their experiences. However, Dr. Webb added, we're also seeing remarkable advances in technology, medicine, and problem solving. The hybrid consciousness appears to be more capable than either original form in many ways. Ambassador Triven of the Centauri Alliance raised a concern that many delegates were thinking. Are you suggesting that all species should undergo this consciousness blending? That we should abandon our unique ways of thinking? Not at all, Sarah replied firmly. Each species' original consciousness is valuable and should be preserved. What we're proposing is voluntary programs for individuals who wish to expand their perceptual abilities while maintaining their cultural identity. She showed the next set of data results from collaboration programs that had been carefully designed to respect cultural boundaries. We've developed protocols that allow consciousness expansion without cultural assimilation, Sarah explained. Participants learn new ways of perceiving while maintaining their core identity and values. They become bridges between their species and others, facilitating cooperation without losing their cultural heritage. Zechtel stepped forward to speak. His transformation over the months had been remarkable. While still recognizably Chronac, his bearing showed confidence and creativity that had been suppressed under the old warrior-dominated system. I am still Chronac, he said proudly. I still see structural integrity and engineering principles as my people do. But now I also see beauty in form, cooperation between materials, harmony in design. I have become more than I was, not different from what I was. The demonstration that followed amazed the assembled delegates. Human Chronac teams solved complex problems with speed and accuracy that astounded observers. They designed new technologies, diagnosed medical conditions, and created artistic works that no single species could have achieved. Dr. Chen, the human geneticist, worked with Grechtel to analyze a genetic disorder that had puzzled Alterian medical specialists for centuries. Within hours, they had identified the cause and proposed a treatment approach. The genetic sequence shows a regulatory problem, Chen explained, pointing to molecular diagrams. But the life force is not flowing correctly through the DNA pathways, Grechtel added, indicating energy patterns that only she could see. The molecules want to work together but are receiving conflicting instructions. Together, they designed a gene therapy that addressed both the biochemical dysfunction and the energetic imbalance, creating a treatment that was far more effective than either species could have developed alone. Ambassador Zethrin was deeply impressed. This is remarkable, but I must ask, what are the broader implications for galactic civilization? If consciousness can be shared and expanded, what does this mean for the future of intelligence itself? Sarah had been hoping someone would ask this question. Honored Ambassador, we believe we're witnessing the next stage of cognitive evolution. For millions of years, intelligence has developed along species-specific lines. Each species evolved consciousness adapted to their particular environment and survival needs. She gestured to include all the delegates. But, now, for the first time, we have the opportunity for conscious, deliberate evolution of intelligence itself. We can choose to expand our perceptual abilities, to see reality from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Captain Throck nodded gravely. This is not easy path. Learning to see as other species see requires much effort and causes much confusion. But, the result is understanding that no single species can achieve alone. Dr. Vasquez presented data on the psychological benefits of consciousness expansion. Individuals who complete the collaboration program show increased creativity, better problem-solving abilities, enhanced empathy, and greater psychological resilience. They report feeling more connected to the universe and more capable of handling complex challenges. But, she also presented the challenges honestly. Some individuals experience identity confusion, difficulty relating to their original culture, and what we call perceptual overload from trying to process too many different types of information simultaneously. The council spent hours discussing the implications. Some delegates were enthusiastic about the possibilities, while others expressed concerns about cultural preservation and the risks of uncontrolled consciousness modification. Finally, High Chancellor Vex of the Central Galactic Authority called for a decision. The Council must determine whether to approve expanded human-Chronac collaboration programs and whether to extend similar opportunities to other species. The debate was intense but respectful. Delegates shared their hopes and fears about consciousness expansion, cultural identity, and the future of galactic civilization. Ambassador Tri then spoke for many when she said, "This technology could revolutionize our understanding of intelligence and cooperation. But, we must proceed carefully to ensure that species diversity is preserved even as consciousness capabilities are expanded." In the end, the Council approved a carefully structured program. Selected volunteers from interested species would participate in consciousness expansion experiments under strict ethical guidelines. Cultural identity preservation would be a primary concern, and no species would be pressured to participate. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility as the vote was announced. The program they had developed with the Chronac would now be extended across the galaxy, potentially transforming the nature of intelligent life itself. As the council session ended, Captain Throck approached Sarah with an expression that had become familiar, the complex mix of warrior intensity and newfound aesthetic appreciation that characterized his transformed consciousness. "Dr. Chen," he said, "you and your people have given Chronac a great gift. We have learned to see beauty and cooperation alongside strength and survival. But, more than this, we have learned that consciousness itself can grow and change." "And your people have given us an equally great gift," Sarah replied. "You've shown us that there are ways of seeing reality that we never imagined. You've taught us that consciousness can be far more specialized and precise than we thought possible." They stood together in the council chamber, two beings from different species who had learned to see the universe through each other's eyes. Around them, delegates from dozens of species were discussing the future of consciousness itself. Sarah realized that first contact had become something unprecedented in galactic history, not just a meeting between civilizations, but the beginning of a new form of evolution. Intelligence itself was evolving, consciousness was expanding, and the future held possibilities that no single species could have imagined alone. The secret of human vision had been revealed not as superiority or inferiority compared to other species, but as one unique approach among many possible ways of understanding reality. And, when combined with other approaches, it created something greater than any single perspective could achieve. The age of isolated species consciousness was ending. The age of collaborative intelligence was about to begin. And Sarah knew that the universe would never be the same.